Hello, I'm Kerry Wilkerson, Tenor and Bass Repertoire and Resources Chair for the Virginia chapter of the American Choral Directors Association, and I'm delighted that you've tuned in to watch this presentation on careers for vocalists in the United States military. A little bit about myself first. I was a member of the United States Air Force Singing Sergeants from 1989 to 1998. I joined the Singing Sergeants right out of undergraduate school. I went to the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, majored in music education, and auditioned for the Air Force in April of 1989, graduated in May, and went into basic training in June. I had a wonderful career there before moving to the U.S. Army Corps in 1998. I served for 20 years in the Army and recently retired in July of 2018. Since retirement, I've been enjoying a career as a voice teacher, both privately and at George Mason University as an adjunct professor of voice, and also performing from coast to coast in different oratorios and concert works primarily. I want to emphasize today that I'm not here to recruit, but to inform. There are over 6,500 classically trained musicians employed by our government in the United States military. This figure was taken from the report by Government Accounting Office. I think the numbers here were April of 2016. This report, the numbers were gathered in April of 2016. The report was published in 2017. Some reasons to consider employment in the United States military: full-time employment, an abundance of benefits, travel. It is a diplomatic mission, meaning that you would probably never see combat. And it's a wonderful networking opportunity to get to know other very, very high-level musicians in the career field. As I'm going through this presentation, there's going to be some terminology that may or may not be familiar to you. Most of the military choruses and vocalist positions will fall under the Department of Defense. The Coast Guard falls under the Homeland Security, and all of them fall under the public affairs divisions within their respective branch of service. Sometimes the branch of service may refer to their music program as a band program. There are premier bands and there are regional bands. That's another distinction. I believe it's the Navy and the Marines that may call them fleet bands. The National Guard does have bands as well and music programs, as do the reserves. If you Google military vocalist, you'll get a lot of hits, more so than military singers. Vocalist seems to be the catchword. Over the next 45 minutes, through a series of interviews with current vocalists in all branches of the military, I will be speaking to you about the Army Chorus, the United States Army Soldiers Chorus, Army Voices, Army Downrange, the Navy Sea Chanters and the Air Force Singing Sergeants, Marine Band vocalists, they do not have a chorus, Coast Guard vocalists, they only have one, and then we'll talk to a singer with the Air Force Band of the Pacific. It's my attempt in this presentation to humanize the singers that fill these positions and hopefully give you some insight to the kind of individual that typically is drawn to these types of jobs. The chorus that I serve the longest, the U.S. Army Chorus, is an all-men's chorus currently, although I suspect that may change. Currently, there are 24 vocalists. There are 12 tenors and 12 baritones and basses. There's one pianist, and there is a conductor. Benjamin Pattison joined the Army Chorus in 2012. I think he went to basic training in December, so he didn't officially come to us until 2013, I believe.
And how long was basic training?
2 months, 10 days. That's ironed into my memory. I was terrified going into it. And it was memorable, but it was a really incredible experience. I was someone who had never really worked with weaponry of any kind or done any combatives training, any hand-to-hand combat, and definitely not a lot of outdoorsmanship. The first time I spent the night outside was at basic training, so it was a growing experience for sure.
What is a day like in the life of an Army chorister?
what I love is the versatility of your day-to-day life, the repertoire, everything. So
You're not just singing, right? There are other things that you have to do.
so that's the thing is we have members who definitely help in the performing aspect, whether it's managing communications or setting up our transportation, things like that. And I handle a lot of those responsibilities for some of our jobs in a title the Army Corps calls a producer. So I'm one of many producers of the group. And so as a performance opportunity comes in, they'll say, Ben, you're going to contact the person who's hosting us, set up all the logistics to get us there, figure out the repertoire we need, that sort of thing. But there are many different jobs that people can volunteer to be a part of. The bread and butter, meat and potatoes, I like to say, is singing. And then as you stay longer and as you choose to, for the most part, you are given opportunities to add to that singing responsibility. There are members who do everything they can to keep that as their 90% of their workload, but there are always things that come up in paperwork, taking care of medical records, things like that. But during COVID, we've had lots of difference in that regular workload. I've had to help stay in control of the number of customers at the commissary, the grocery store on Fort Myer. So I stand at the door and say, hold on, there are 50 people. I've got to let one go. Okay, now you can go in. So I was like the bouncer basically for the grocery store on Fort Myer. Coming up, there's going to be a time where I'll be taking temperatures of people coming into the sort of mission control room of all the military leadership and information that's in Washington, D.C. I'll be taking temperatures at the door. I've helped coordinate where cars go, parking at the Raider Clinic on the medical clinic on Fort Myer. So COVID has definitely changed a lot of things for us. Those are not always volunteered opportunities. Those are, as we call them, voluntold opportunities sometimes.
What are the big advantages you see in being a part of a military chorus?
I always joke with people, whether they're in the military community or civilian, I say, my parents are just happy I'm not living in their basement, which there's no problem living in your basement of your parents' house. But, as a music major, I had no idea what I was going to do. When I was a trumpet major originally, I thought I'll play in an orchestra, have that as a steady gig and, have a family and put down roots, do that. Singers don't really generally get that opportunity. And so for me to have a varied workload, be able to put down roots in the DC area, provide for a family with military benefits and things. I'm under the old Army pension system to look forward to a pension one day. All those things combined just makes it a really special opportunity I'm really grateful for.
What are the downsides?
We don't often get to pick and choose our repertoire or our audiences, so we're sort of at the liberty of what the Army tells us to do and what those audiences want. So you're sort of always on call. You don't have the summer off or usually generally holidays are when we're our busiest, right? So patriotic holidays and, time where other people are spending time with their families, we're entertaining them. I think those are the biggest challenges that come to mind. Yeah.
What other things would you like for people to know about the gig?
I think as I've done some recruiting for our auditions, I think the thing that comes up that's so special about this group is that you might be singing with someone, good or bad, for 20 plus years, right? So you can, people talk about, you might be in an amazing show and the cast is just so connected and wonderful. And after a few months, potentially, you could all go your separate ways and you're never together in that same group of people, same environment. Really beautiful connections can come from us being together for so many years. Now, you don't have to do that. I like to think about people who could treat the Army Chorus or any military vocal ensemble as a young artist program if they wanted to. Come in for a few years and then go off to continue in a career that is totally different. I think I like to tell people there's no wrong way to do this job.
So an important distinction between the Army Chorus and the Army Soldiers Chorus, obviously the Army Soldiers Chorus is SATV. But the bigger issue is that the Army Chorus exists at Fort Myer, Virginia, inside the Washington, D.C. Beltway to support ceremonies and protocol events that happen in the National Capital Region, whereas the Army Soldiers Chorus, they are at Fort Meade, Maryland, and their primary mission is touring and community relations events. As I said, they are SATB, 14 women, 14 men. They have one pianist, and typically an officer is assigned to them as a conductor. Had the chance to get to know Andre McCrae as a member of the Army Chorus, although he began his career in the Army with the Soldiers Chorus. I think he was with them for just a couple of years. We talk about that in this upcoming interview. Andre is one of the more talented people I've ever met in my life, and I'm just going to let you hear what he has to say.
You were a member of the Soldiers Chorus for only not even 2 years.
Not even 2 years, but I got to do 3 tours though. So I really got a sense of the Soldiers Chorus. I did a lot with the Soldiers Chorus.
The culture of the Army Chorus doesn't involve touring.
Right.
So the Army Chorus, and I want to make this clear to people that are viewing this video, the Army Chorus exists primarily to support ceremonies and protocol events within the Washington, D.C. capital region. So there really is no touring with the Army Chorus. There was some travel here and there, but not touring. And that is probably the primary difference between the Army Chorus and the Army Soldiers Chorus.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about what that was like. What was everyday life like in the Soldiers Chorus?
The Soldiers Chorus tours about 150 days out of the year. We go on a tour, which is about 40 days. And in that 40 days, you're in a different city pretty much almost every day. You may have, a stop where it's like a couple of days. You're lucky if it's like a week. Rarely is it like a week. But in that 40-day time, you're on a bus, so you arrive somewhere, maybe, I don't know, 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then you take a little bit of a break, maybe have rehearsal, sound check, then you have your concert. And then, you go to bed and you get on a bus and you go to the next little stop, so.
How many tours were there per year usually?
There are 2 big tours, and then there was a smaller tour in the summertime. So you have like the winter tour, and then you've got the tour in the spring, and then you've got a summer that's like 3 weeks, and then you've got these other sort of little runouts that you do for like a week or so.
So the primary focus of the Soldiers Chorus really is the community relations tours. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit.
Gary, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I always say that the Army Chorus, or the United States Army Band, Pershing Zone, is like the Broadway show in New York, and the Soldiers Chorus is like the tour. So Hamilton is here at the Kennedy Center. It's going to be in Chicago. That's what the Soldiers Chorus is. It's that touring company. And the Army Chorus is Broadway, where it stays in New York.
That's really interesting. I've never heard anyone describe the 2 choruses that way, or the 2 bands that way even, but I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I know that the Soldiers Chorus revolved mostly around the tours. I understand that.
That's right.
But what was a regular day? What was a regular day like in the life of somebody in the Soldiers Chorus when not touring?
Right. You have rehearsal every day, and this is a big difference with the Army Chorus. The Army Chorus works, and works hard, but if there isn't anything that's coming up, then there is more flexibility in the schedule with the Army Chorus. With the Soldiers Chorus, no matter what, you're rehearsing Monday through Friday in the morning. So we would get a morning rehearsal starting at 9 o'clock, you get a little break, and then you rehearse. And then a lot of folks would have administrative responsibilities that you would do maybe sometime in the afternoon.
What kind of additional duties were you required to do as an E6, a staff sergeant?
Well, at least when I was there, the first year, they don't want you to do anything, because they want you to just be able to to see what the job was like and have a good handle on the job. So for the first year, I'm almost not allowed to have any kind of extracurricular things. And so, but then once the year is up, because we're touring, there's all kinds of administrative things that you need to do.
What did that look like, going out on the road for 40 days with 130 people, probably, including tech support, probably more?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a family. albeit maybe a bit of a dysfunctional one. But it's a family. You sort of decide what bus that you're going to be on, and some buses are more quiet than others. Each bus has its own culture, and you decide what bus you're going to be on based on that. Whether you're going to be a bus of people that read all the time, or a bus that's watching movies together. I mean, you know how it is. It's short enough that you have enough time to have a good time with everyone, and then then you go back to your families.
Is there anything else that you would like to say?
I really firmly believe this is such a great option for young singers, because you sign up for 3 years, and there are so many opportunities for you to build financially, to build as an artist, to build in your craft, to find yourself. And if you play your cards right and use your time, because one of the best gifts that we have is time. If you use your time and you play your cards right, then there are so many possibilities for you. And then after 3 years, 4 years, you can move on, or you can stay.
Also assigned to Fort Myer, the Army Band at Fort Myer, Virginia, is the small group Army Voices. This is a relatively new group. Its prior iteration was the Army Chorale, which was disbanded, I can't remember how long ago now. I think Crystal will speak to that in just a minute. But this is a relatively new group with 4 men and 4 women. They also have a pianist assigned to them, and they occasionally will do some things with a small combo, but primarily they perform a cappella works. They do perform some piano accompanied works, but then primarily they're performing with the Army Concert Band on special events, large concerts. Sorry, it's Colin Eaton that will speak to this in a moment. Colin Eaton is the current group leader for Army Voices. He began his career in the Army Chorus in 1999. One of the youngest members we ever hired into the Army Chorus. He was only 20 when he was brought into the chorus. Outstanding singer, and I'll just let you hear what he has to say.
Army Voices how would you describe it? It's like a rebirth or a reimagination of what used to be the Army Chorale?
So the Army Voices is the small mixed ensemble that covers a wide berth of musical genres: classical musical theater, jazz, pop, rock. We're primary vocalists for the Twilight Tattoos. We're the primary soloists for the concert band. We're the primary soloists for the Strolling Strings. So we have our hands in everything, everything related to the United States Army Band Pershing Zone. Our group, we have 8 amazing vocalists, an amazing pianist, accompanist, and we all have to work together synergistically to create this super tight sound that's become our hallmark. As the group leader, I also have to be comfortable sending these folks out to do anthems, to do a pop song for Twilight Tattoo, to do a classical song with the concert band, to do musical theater, so we all have to have these varied styles. So not one single person in the group is stuck with one style. Everyone is very multifaceted, and that's sort of what makes us stand out.
How often does Army Voices rehearse?
We rehearse 3 to 4 times a week, depending on the workload. If we're doing full productions with the entire organization, we're there. It feels like 24/7.
Tell us about the audition process for Army Voices.
Well, the Army Voices audition process starts with a feeling out process. So we send out feelers to different colleges and universities, different areas where music is prevalent, theater and opera, things of that nature. And we send out a blast. We have the United States Army Band Pershing Zone's audition coordination team is among the best in the world. And they send out the feelers, they send out a blast to create the interest. Once we have a significant number of packets, myself and my 2 section leaders in the group, we vet all of the candidates, and we siphon through, see who would make the cut, who would be a good fit for Army Voices. For example, this most recent audition we had 26 packets, 26 candidates sent in recordings for the Army Voices audition, and we decided to select 4 to come in. because those four best represented what we were looking for at the time. So it's a very selective process where you have to not just meet the musical standards and goals, military standards and goals that they set out, but also personality-wise. Because as you know, a lot of people, they start a career in military music and they stick with that career until retirement. Well, you have to be able to work with those people for that 20 years if they so choose. So you have to make sure that the fit is right personality-wise as well. So there's a huge interview portion of the audition process as well. Once we bring in those candidates, we'll set them up and we'll listen to them individually. We'll have them sing with us as well, see how they blend with our group. And then we'll have another interview portion where they sit down and talk with us and they share their vision for what they think they could bring to the group. We share our vision and expectations of the group to them. And once we've wrapped all that up, then we have a final sit down and decide which one is the best candidate for our group. So yes, you have to be a stellar musician. You have to pass all the military standards and requisites, but you also have to fit in with this Army Voices group, which is more like a family. When you have a group this small and tight knit, the personalities have to mesh.
You look for innate talent. You look for what are people's gifts and how can you utilize the gifts that they have to contribute to the organization and make your ensemble stronger.
We're reaching a point where we're self-sustaining. The organization is, so we have two SAP members. We have Army Voices members in HR, Army Voices members in the library, Army Voices members assisting tech and audio and video. So yeah, it's no longer a one-trick pony. You don't just come in and sing. Singing is what gets you in the door. What sustains you is everything else that comes along with it.
Also attached to the United States Army Band at Fort Myer, Virginia, is the Army Downrange. This is a unit that deploys regularly throughout the world to entertain troops in the battlefield. They also do quite a bit of work in the Washington, D.C. capital region. Their group leader is Crystal Reams, and I had the chance to sit down with her over the holidays back in December. There are 4 vocalists assigned to this group. This is sort of a high energy rock band. Crystal will tell you more. Crystal, she and I both went to UNC Greensboro all the very different times. And she began her career, interestingly, as a singer. She did not actually join the Army to become a singer. This is something that happened after the fact, and she speaks to all this. So I'll just let her tell you her story.
You've had a really interesting background. You and I were both attended the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. You were not a music major at Greensboro, were you?
No, communications.
Communications, okay. Yep. So you were a communications major at UNC Greensboro, and then you joined the Army.
I joined the Army, one, because money ran low for school. That's the first thing. And then 2, when I joined the Army, I joined as the National Guard. So I joined in the North Carolina National Guard, and the job I was given was Transportation Corps. So I didn't join the Army for music at all. I didn't join the Army to do music, even though I had been very active and involved in musical theater, private voice lessons, school information, school choirs, everything from the age of 6 until the time that I joined the Army. So it was a very interesting choice, but at that point in time, I felt like I wanted to do something different.
You have one of the most extraordinary voices I've ever heard. You can sing literally just about anything and sing just about anything very, very well. So I'm sure it didn't take long for the Army to figure out that they had a serious talent on their hands. How did you get involved in military music? I
ended up being stationed at Fort Hood, of all places, which Fort Hood is big on the radar these days. But I ended up being stationed at Fort Hood, and I just somehow or another ended up being stationed or living in the barracks with the band. And I would go out on my balcony, headed to work or, in the morning or wherever I was going. And, there might be one of the guitarists or pianists out there and they're playing or doodling around. And, every so often I'd stop and I'd just sing with them, start singing. Hey, this, yeah, we're singing. And well, I guess one of them went back and told their commander that there's this girl in the barracks that can sing. And I went down, and I'll never forget this. I went down to then the second AD, which is now defunct. It's the one with the patch over your heart for any of you military folks that wondered what that is. And he said, well, sing for me. I sang maybe 16 bars of Summertime, and he cut me off. He says, okay, you're good, you're hired. I spent 4.5 years at the 2nd AD, 4th ID Army Band, which is a small division band. But they were the most 4.5 informative and formative years, probably of my whole musical military career. Because it was there in that space that I learned what it was to be a military vocalist. I learned, different genres that I was not singing before. I mean, I was a musical theater kid. So acting and forming those things were a part of musical theater. Okay, I have to be country now. But it's different when you're singing those genres of music. And so I learned a lot of flexibility in those 4.5 years before I actually came to the Army Band. So I'm really grateful for that time that I spent there.
So you moved from a divisional band to a premier band. What was that transition like?
It was huge. And I'm just going to speak musically. I worked with some talented folks. I cannot say enough about some of the great people that I worked with. But I stepped into, it was almost like stepping out of a black box theater into Carnegie Hall.
What position did you fill when you joined the Army Band?
I was a member of the United States Army Chorale, which is now not a part of the Army Band. The Army Band decided at some point in time that they needed to attempt to transition the chorale, which was a show choir, into an element that served a current population. So something a little bit more popular. So that's where I started. And that's where we are now. So from a show choir to a popular band.
What was your transition from the chorale like to downrange?
For me personally, it was easy. I actually was a part of that transition, moving from a dated, for us, what was a dated model to something that was a little bit more current.
Is there anything else that you'd like people to know about your job, about your career, about what it's like to be a vocalist in the military?
Music has healing properties, and it has bonding properties, and everything that we can do to further the use of music through the military, we should do that.
Moving on to other branches of the service, the Navy Sea Chanters and the Air Force Singing Sergeants are very similar in size and scope. You'll understand why I've grouped these two together in just a second. The 19 vocalists in the Sea Chanters, 20 in the Singing Sergeants. Both of these groups perform frequently with combos, piano, drums, guitar. I know both of these groups frequently perform with their concert bands. I grouped these two together because I like to refer to Matt and Amy as a power couple within the military choruses. Matt Hill is a member of the Air Force Singing Sergeants, and his wife Amy is a member of the United States Navy Sea Chanters. And I had a chance to sit down with them this past December and chat about their jobs.
What was basic training like in the Navy?
It was very cold when I was there. December in Great Lakes, which was about an hour north of Chicago. It was a very challenging experience in many ways, but it was also interesting and eye-opening in some ways too, just to be with such a diverse group of people who came from all different parts of the United States, from Florida all the way to Alaska. It was really, really wild, and unlike anything I had ever done before.
So Matt, I know you went to San Antonio, right? Lackland Air Force Base.
Yeah, basic training was definitely challenging. I made sure that before I went, I wanted to be able to do all the sort of physical requirements, or just be comfortable doing all the physical requirements before I got there. Like, I knew I needed to run my 1.5 miles in under 12 minutes, and I knew I had to be able to do 50 push-ups in a minute. So I was like, well, I'm just going to make sure that I can do those before I get there, and then everything else should be easy. Anytime I've talk to people about the job. I think that's probably the most intimidating thing. And
Mhm.
if you're just not used to like a physical sort of exercise regimen, it sounds pretty daunting, but once you like, have a job offer, it becomes a lot easier to be motivated to, make sure that you can do those things.
Well, walk us through what a day in the life of a military chorister is like.
In our experience observing each other's schedules, I would say there is no typical day. I think also in a typical non-COVID year, things tend to come in cycles. So in the summer, we'll typically be doing a lot more performing. We have a tour, usually 3 to 4 weeks every spring for the Navy Band. As Matt mentioned earlier, the holidays can be really busy.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think similar to what Amy said, there's no normal day. I'd say that every season has sort of normal days. Like during Christmas and the holidays, we have something like almost every single day. Whether it's usually we have rehearsals, during the daytime, like sort of sometime between 10 and 3 p.m. And then you always have like your collateral duties where some people, they work for the marketing team where they make sure that people know when our concerts are. And there's some people who work for the social media and then they set everything up on Facebook. There's other people who they make sure that all the people in the band have their instruments. They work in supply, or there's other people who work in production and they make sure that everybody, all of our videos get produced. So like we do everything else, at least in both of our groups, most everything that we produce and do, we do it sort of ourselves, at least in the bands. So a lot of times when you're not rehearsing or performing, you're also doing some other job. Like I'm the librarian in the singing sergeants, and I'm also the crew chief, which means I make sure that we have the right crew for all of our gigs.
What are the distinct advantages in your minds of being a part of a military ensemble?
I guess financial security is an easy answer. I mean, particularly during the pandemic we felt very lucky in that regard. But I think also we have a nice group of coworkers and colleagues in both of our respective ensembles. And it makes a big difference if you enjoy the people that you see day in and day out.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say the same thing. And also, I mean, this may appeal to some people and it may not, but we definitely do a pretty wide range of repertoire. Yeah, like on tour concerts, I've sung opera arias, I've sung 50s doo-wop medleys, I've sung barbershop quartets, I've sung patriotic songs, musical theater things. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty wide breadth of music that you sing in these groups, which I think is really great for some people, and then other people find that maybe less appealing, but I think that it's pretty cool.
What are disadvantages of being in the military as a singer?
Yeah, the military structure and sort of artistic structure can fight with each other.
Are there any other things that you guys would like people to know about your jobs?
When I was in college studying music, it wasn't something that I initially thought I would want to do. So if anyone is unsure but interested, I would encourage them to audition. It doesn't hurt anything by auditioning. It can only make you better as a performer and give you more experience, and you can learn just by auditioning about if it's a career path that would be interesting to you.
That's great advice. Don't assume that just because you audition, you're going to get the gig.
Right.
I auditioned 5 times before I was offered a job. Amy auditioned, twice?
2 times.
Moving on to the Marines, the Marine Band has 2 vocalists assigned to them. They are stationed in Southeast Washington, D.C. Sarah Sheffield and I actually served together in the United States Army Band. She began her career as a member of the U.S. Army Chorale, which was also, she and Crystal served together around the same time. And Sarah moved over to the Marine Bands when they opened up a slot for a female vocalist.
So you are one of 2 soloists with the United States Marine Band.
Yes,
Right.
myself and a baritone.
Right, and they do not have a chorus.
No, we're the one of the few in the military that doesn't have a choral component. I think the Marines and the Coast Guard are the only 2 without a choral group.
Are there other vocalists in the Marines?
Only recently, they have just opened up some some billets in the fleet bands around the world. There's always been Marine bands in the world where you could go to the Marine School of Music and be trained and then be assigned and stationed with those bands. They have only recently, I think within the last year or two, started accepting vocalists in those positions. So it's very new. So there are a lot of new young singers coming up in the Marine Corps right now.
And this is another interesting point about the President's own Marine Band. No one goes through basic training. Is that correct?
That is true. We are a little bit different in that respect from some of the other service bands. Once we report to Washington, D.C., our Marines go through about a 30-day training specifically tailored to the Marines of the band with our drum major, who is someone very knowledgeable in customs, courtesies, and all the traditions that the Marine Corps has to offer. And so they give us our military indoctrination and welcome us to the band so that we can be prepared to do our specific mission.
But you did go through Army basic training, correct?
I sure did. That was
Yeah.
many years ago.
you have the scars to prove
Almost
it. Huh?
20 years ago.
Well, let's talk about lifestyle and what's a day in the life of Sarah Sheffield, gunnery sergeant.
Well, it's very different now, of course, because of COVID, but let's pretend that it's a regular here in the life of a Marine. And the truth is that there are no days that are the same. That's probably one of the things I like most about this job is the versatility that it brings. The work that I do is very seasonal. Of course, the primary mission of the Marine Band is to provide music for the White House and the Commandant of the Marine Corps. So whenever those offices make a request for a national anthem or some kind of entertainment, then we're on call for that. But during the spring, we have a concert season that runs usually every Sunday, either a chamber recital or a full band concert. So I'm always preparing for those concerts. And then in the summer, we do outdoor concerts in the middle of the week on the steps of the Capitol for tourists and whoever happens to be in the area. So that's a great way to have the music spread across the National Mall and have people come experience Washington, D.C. in that way. That's always a lot of fun. In the fall, the Marine Band goes on tour. So usually the month of October, I'm out on the road with the band, traveling to various parts of the country for 30 days. We hop on the bus, go do the show, spend the night in the hotel, hop on the bus, go do the show, spend the night in the hotel, and so on for 30 days. And then that brings us back to Washington for November for the Marine Corps birthday on November 10th and Veterans Day, of course. And then by December, we're back at the White House supporting all the holiday celebrations and things like that. So that's kind of a, sorry, you asked for a day in the life of a Marine. I just gave you a year in the life of a Marine.
It's really, what's so funny to me about that statement though, Sarah, is that's what everyone has done. I've asked every single person this question, what's a day in your life like? And people start talking about kind of the pattern of a full year.
It depends on the season, right?
And
yeah.
Everyone has said no 2 days are alike. Everyone has said that. The daily schedule of a military musician, there's usually a lot of downtime. I wouldn't call it free time.
Yeah.
Is that fair, even with the Marine Band?
I think that is fair. There is a good bit of downtime or time where you're at home practicing, doing the research, writing your notes, whatever you need to be doing to be ready for the concert. The issue is that you never know when that time is going to be. And the Marine Band does have a policy where you've got to have your phone handy between, I think it's 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. So if you get a call that morning to come in for the job that day, then you're set and ready to go. So the hours are definitely odd. Sometimes you have the day off, but then you're working all night. Or, you'll have a few days in the week off, but you're working all weekend. So it's sort of regular, weird musician hours.
What are the advantages of being a military singer?
It's really amazing to me that a girl who grew up in East Texas is able to go and sing for the President of the United States in the White House and walk through those halls. So definitely that's one of the neat things about being a military musician.
Similar to the Marine Band, the United States Coast Guard Band has one vocalist assigned to them. Megan Wakeling and I had never met before I interviewed her for this presentation last January. Had a lovely conversation with her.
How did you find out about the position with the United States Coast Guard?
Well, this is funny. One of my closest friends, we're still friends today, is a trombone player. And all of my instrumentalist friends were auditioning after college for the military bands. And I, as a vocalist, never heard of them. You know, the path was to do a young artist program or audition for opera companies and things like that. And so he was talking to me about it, and he said, you know, there's wonderful careers in the military, and you get to play your instrument and sing, and you know, it's just, it's a wonderful job for your family. And I kind of listened, but I was like, yeah, I don't think there's anything like that for a vocalist. But I was actually at NEC and looked at their job board, and there was a posting for a voice, a soprano opening for the Coast Guard band. And I looked at the application and I said, wow, this is amazing. So I don't know if I'll be a good fit, but I'll audition. So that's how I found it.
What was the basic training experience like going through Coast Guard?
Well, I'm hesitant to talk about that a little bit just because it's not as difficult as other branches. So, but I did not have to go to basic training. I guess as what a normal military member would call it. I went to the extreme basic training where I went to Cape May, where the boot camp is set up, and I learned in a classroom about all of the ranks and regulations and colors and how to wear my hair and all of that sort of thing. So I went there for about a week, and then I was thrown in, and they've changed it since I've been in, that if you are going to be a part of the band and enlisted and you get in, you need to go for 2 weeks to Cape May. And they have a, I guess, modified training for them.
Walk us through a day in the life of the Coast Guard soloist.
Well, on any given day, I think my job looks like any other musician or vocalist. You know, I practice, take care of my instrument, and I'm always looking at rep and listening for what's new, what's next. I would say just a regular day, we go in, we have mornings for rehearsals and practices, and we have performances probably once a week, but a full band performance once a month at our concert hall at Leamy Hall at the Academy. And I usually will have about 10 minutes of a slot for a soloist performance. I will sing an opera aria or an art song, or I'll sing musical theater, or sometimes a folk song, depending on what the theme of the concert is. I'm usually asked to do something, and I will try to find the rep, and I'll speak with our arrangers and see if it's possible to have it arranged. And Christmas, during the Christmas season, I get to do a full concert where I sing a lot. So that's something I look forward to every year.
What is your travel schedule like with the Coast Guard band?
Travel, well, in a normal year, I would say we do a 2 to 2.5 week tour, national tour. That is one of the highlights for the band. We get to play music for different regions of the country.
You mentioned collateral or additional duties. What other duties do you have in addition to the vocalist?
I'm newer in this position. I've been in for about a year and a half, but I'm in the community outreach series, or initiative, I should say, community outreach initiative team. So we try to send small groups out within the community to do small concerts, and I coordinate that with local venues. And also we work with the local schools in the area to schedule that we bring all the kids into the academy to put on an educational performance for them. And then we also send out small groups to their schools to do educational performances in the area probably within an hour or 60 miles of the base. But since COVID, we've been able to do national master classes and things like that through videos and Google Classroom and things like that.
And last but not least, I wanted you to hear from somebody who's out in the field. She's a graduate of the George Mason University that we're very proud of. Sarah Moyers began her career as an Air Force vocalist at Langley Air Force Base in Hampton Roads, Virginia. She is now serving in Hawaii with the Air Force Band of the Pacific.
Oh, hi, I'm Senior Airman Moyers, and I am currently an Air Force vocalist with the Band of the Pacific, stationed at Hickam Air Force Base in Honolulu, Hawaii.
So tell us a little bit about how you came to the Air Force.
I was at Mason not for music, and I ended up kind of stumbling upon jazz singing as an accident. One of my good friends was taking lessons with Darden Purcell, the director of jazz studies there. And she said, hey, why don't you think about lessons if, this is something you like to do for fun? So, yeah, I started lessons with Darden, absolutely fell in love with the music. And then as I worked with her, she was telling me a lot about her history as an Air Force singer and all the traveling she had gotten to do, all the benefits involved with that. And so by the time that I made the decision that singing is what I wanted to do for a career, it seemed like the most logical choice to me to kind of follow in her footsteps and take a military gig.
Hickam Air Force Base was not your first assignment, correct?
It's not. So this is my second assignment, first real military move. But I finished school at Mason, went straight to basic training, and then was stationed at Langley Air Force Base down by Virginia Beach. In Hampton Roads, that whole general area. And so I was serving there for 2 years and then just moved here like 3 weeks ago to start my second assignment.
Can you explain to people the difference between the premier bands and what does the Air Force call them? Regional bands?
Yeah. So I'm in what's called a regional band. Every military branch has a premier side that's usually stationed in DC, and then a regional side, or it's called fleet, or other things based on whether you're Air Force, Navy, Army.
You found out about an opening in a regional band, and
Yeah.
What was that audition process like for you?
So for the regional band auditions, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of the premier bands, there was a online submission portion. So I think they wanted maybe 6 recordings of just contrasting styles. So they wanted a pop song, a jazz song, something rock, something country, the national anthem, of course, since as a military vocalist, that's probably the song you perform the most. So they asked for recordings of things like that just for the preliminary virtual round. So I submitted those, got results about a month later, and then was invited to a live audition. So for the live portion, there was a list of songs that you could select your top choice from to perform, and then some things that it was set in stone, like this is what you're doing with the band. So it was similar in that they had you perform music in many different styles for the live audition, along with the anthem.
Was the live audition at Langley?
Yes.
Okay, so you were auditioning for that specific spot.
I mean, I was in a way, but with the way that, at least with Air Force Band auditions, usually there will just be a duty station that's selected to hold auditions. And so when you're trying out for a vocal slot, you're trying out for a vocal slot at every duty station that has an opening. So it just worked out in my favor that I got the slot that I wanted, and it happened to be an audition that I could drive to, and it was super easy in that way. But I was originally slated to go to Nebraska to work with the band out in Omaha. And so just by a turn of events, I ended up where I auditioned, but that's usually not the case from what I understand.
This is another big difference between the premier bands and the regional bands. For example, the singing sergeants, the professional corps of the Air Force, that's a permanent duty station. Whereas the vocalist positions in the regional bands or the fleet bands, or I think the Army calls them field bands, those positions you move around, correct?
You do. Yeah, as a vocalist or really any other instrument that would normally play in a rock band or a deployment band is what we usually call them. You pretty much expect to move I was told every 2 to 3 years is kind of the average. just because as a vocalist, you're more likely to go overseas and say like a clarinet player or, something where there's not as much of a need for a task force to go out and work directly with the public.
How do you like moving around?
So I actually don't mind it. I know some people prefer to be in one place and have, set expectations with how your life is going to be. But for me, one of the big draws of taking a field band job like this, or a regional vocalist position, was the draw of moving, just because I knew as a singer specifically, I'd have more options for moving than several other instruments. So as a vocalist in the Air Force, I could be stationed at Honolulu, obviously, and then also at Ramstein in Germany, and then Yokota in Japan, which are all really, really exciting options. And so since I'm not married, not tied down, no children, this is kind of an exciting time in my life to have those chances to move.
Well, that's it for all the interviews. I hope it's been helpful. And as I said from the beginning, I hope that it's sort of humanized the positions that singers hold in the military and given you an idea of the quality of individual. The takeaways that I hope you'll get from this presentation, I hope you noticed the collegiality that exists among the singers. They're all very, very nice people and work and play well together. I also hope you noticed the level of education. Everybody that I spoke to did not actually have an undergraduate degree, but I would say they have equivalent education level or training as an undergraduate at minimum. I do hope you get the sense that these are competitive positions, but not in the ways that you might think. You saw everybody and notice that everybody is fit, and everybody, I can tell you, everybody going into the military has to have a very clean background. There are things that keep people out of even the audition process that you might not necessarily think. So it's not necessarily the best voice that gets the job. It may be just the best overall fit. I think everyone talked about versatility, and it is something that I found throughout my career very enjoyable. No 2 days were alike, but also no two concerts were alike. We were performing a wide variety of music, which was always fun. I hope you also got the flexibility that's required. You don't always get to do the things you want to do. Sometimes you have to do things that you're told to do, but there's freedom that comes with that. The schedule is not always the same, and there is a lot of downtime, and you're able to do a lot of things with the time that you have. Also hope you understood physical fitness is a requirement of the job, and it's a very important requirement of the job. I was grateful and still am to this day that one of the things the military did for me was instill a habit of daily exercise in my routine. Even after I've retired, I've maintained that, and my health is reaping the benefits of that. So I don't see that as a bad thing, but it is something that needs to be stated up front. One of the questions people ask me all the time when I talk about positions for vocalists in the military, why does the government invest so heavily in music? And I truly believe it's because music is a universal language. I truly believe that there's something military music says and displays to the world that makes us a better country. It makes us more approachable, and it makes us better communicators. What separates the bands and the instrumental ensembles, and I think this is true of all musicians, vocalists, we have words to sing, and those words carry meaning. And in my experience with the military, there were often times where a song could express the sentiment of a leader better than his own words. It's important also to understand that these positions are viable and sustainable forms of employment for musicians. And again, I can't stress the outstanding benefits that come along with it, not just medical and dental, but also educational. And a lot of these benefits extend to your family and extended family. If you're interested in looking into positions in the military, I don't expect you to write down all these websites, but simply go to Google or whatever your favorite search engine is, and just type in openings for military vocalists. You'll probably get more hits with the term vocalist than singer. And of course, if you have any questions at all, feel free to contact me at my Gmail account, carrie.wilkerson@gmail. You can also contact me through the website, carriewilkerson.com. Thank you so much for watching.